Hi, everyone. My name's Tom Doran, and I'm here with Ryan McBee. We're going to speak with you today about the future of GP and, in our cute little uh, title, Dynamics GP to BC, should you stay or should you go? So I'm going to let my friend Ryan introduce himself first. So, Ryan, go ahead.
Tom, thanks for having me. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Ryan McBee from iSolutions. I'm very excited to be doing this with my long-term time friend and colleague, Tom Doran. Personally, I've been in the Microsoft channel going on 20 years now. I graduated college 2002. First job was kind of like a bookkeeper. And when I was there, they moved off of BusinessWorks onto Great Plains. So I started off as an end user and got recruited to get into consulting. Moved back to my hometown, and I've owned a GP VAR, and now my company builds apps that are in the Microsoft App Store for Business Central. GP is obviously my first love. Several years ago, after doing upgrades to GP, my team, we would log in the homepage of GP, and Microsoft kind of made the homepage of GP a billboard or advertisement for Business Central. So at that time, it became evident, this is where the future's at, and Microsoft's making a huge investment on the cloud platform from on-premise.
Great. Thanks, Ryan.
That's a great picture of us, by the way. I wish we looked like that right now.
That's right. So, as I mentioned, my name is Tom Doran. I'm with Innovia Consulting. I'm our Chief Marketing Officer. I've been with Innovia for 14 years. I've been working with Business Central and Nav and Navision before that for about 5 years. And so today we're just here to share our perspective. As Ryan said, he's got a long track record in the GP space. And so we just want to talk about what we've seen, maybe lessons learned, and give you some food for thought as you begin to contemplate, what does the future look like for your company? So, yep. Ryan, I'll let you get started and give us a little perspective from a GP partner's point of view.
Sure. From my perspective, I can always view GP as best. I think, Nav, I was like, oh, it's for this, and GP's the king of the Dynamics family. And, like I said, a few years ago, it kind of became clear, the things are shifting towards BC. And, honestly, when I first logged into BC, it looked very foreign to me. And, this idea of operating through an internet browser, I was like, it just seemed weird. And 3 years later, I can see why Microsoft made this decision to move in that direction. When I first started off in the Microsoft channel, all their different technology, was all in a different island. Email was over here, Exchange server, it was his own server, SQL Server was over here. You had a SQL server, or different servers for GP, NAV, whatever the case might be. And, then you have something like Citrix or an RDP, VPN to get in all your applications. And, now, all this technology is on one central island, being, 365. So when you log in 365, everything's at your fingertips, your email, your Excel, Power BI, and of course, Business Central and some of the other 365 platforms. In my personal opinion, I think GP is still a great product. I don't think there's anything in there, it's like you can't do in BC or vice versa. There's a lot of functionality in there. In some cases, I think GP might have, better functionality than BC. However, I do really, one thing I do love about BC is the dimensions. I think anyone who's worked with analytical accounting and GP would admit, it's not the best module for tracking, different things on your P&L. I also will be honest, project accounting and manufacturing is a huge upgrade with Business Central. Development is much easier. Just a lot of things that we've done with our app in BC. There's just not a way to do those inside of Great Plains and some of the older, platforms. So BC is definitely, grown on me to say the least.
Well, thank you. And, as Ryan mentioned, we've known each other for a long time. His business partner, Barb, we're all friends, and we've all spent some time together over the years. And so, about 10 years ago, I did, they familiarized me with GP, and I really have a lot of respect for the Great Plains product. But about 6 or 7 years ago, I guess now, Microsoft invited Innovia to come over to Copenhagen with a few other partners as they were designing their cloud and SaaS solutions. And in those conversations, it became really clear that Microsoft was going to pick one or two products, but not all of the Dynamics products to be SaaS supported. And as the conversations continued to develop over there, it became abundantly clear that it was going to be F&O and it was going to be Navision that were going to be these cloud products, and where Microsoft was going to be putting a lot of their resources. Now, as things unfolded, it became a welcome surprise to us. For those of us that have been around Microsoft a long time, they weren't always great listeners. But in the development of the Business Central product, they were really listening to end users closely. And the big takeaway was, look, it's really expensive to do these upgrades. We love our product, but the fact that we have this ongoing maintenance and these huge upgrades that come up every 3 to 5 years, we want an easier solution to stay current with. And the mantra, the catchphrase that Marco was using at the time was, look, we want to make an upgrade feel a lot more like an oil change and a lot less like an engine change. And in our perspective, they really hit the ball right out of the park with that one. The upgrades for Business Central have been really seamless. It ranges from 0 time from your partner at all to maybe 5 or 10 hours twice a year. And so the idea that you get yourself out of those upgrade cycles and that you can stay current on the technology was a big lift for the Dynamics community in general. Now, all of that said, nobody ever got out of bed in the morning and said, hey, boy, I really want an upgrade. This is something you want to think about and you want to plan. And so, Ryan, from your perspective, as somebody was giving thought to this and they're starting their planning process, what would be your advice?
Yeah, a couple things that you hit on, before I even get into that, I like, what you're talking about with the upgrades. As you know, with BC, I do like how they upgrade twice a year and it's automatic, and there's some, a lot of minor upgrades along the way. Being a longtime GP guy, some of our GP have a lot of ISVs, and some of our clients would have at least maybe 10 ISV products. And anytime we do an upgrade, our team would have to go around to all those ISVs. Hey, I need a reg key. I need the new media. By the way, I'm coming from this old build. What's the path? And it's just a lot of work to get all those little things upgraded. And then on top of it, with GP, you had people had different workstations. Not all the big clients had like a terminal server, and you do one install and it was nice and clean. But a lot of the clients would have, you'd go around to workstations, and we'd have like 10, 4 or 5 workstations. I'd go to one, and I'd kick off the GP upgrade, and I'd go to one, do another one. Then it's kind of musical chairs, and I'd go around the next one, and say, okay, time to kick off the this ISV product. And I mean, thinking about that now, I'm like, that just seems crazy, going back and doing that. So yeah, that definitely upgrades. That's huge. In terms of project considerations, just being, straight and forthcoming, moving to BC is not an upgrade. I think we both agree on that. Or it's not an upgrade, Tom. It's like a whole project. Even though, as we both know as well, Microsoft has some tools like, hey, here's a little utility package. You can migrate your customers, your vendors, payment methods, those little basic things. But it definitely gets a little bit tricky from there. So yeah, given that it's not an upgrade, it's going to be a big project. So a couple things to consider. If it were me and my company, the first thing I would look at is infrastructure. Anytime we would do a G upgrade, the first thing, a lot of times people would have to replace their old servers, and those servers are not cheap, and that was a pretty big cost. So with a SaaS solution like 365, less time is spent on that maintenance and infrastructure, and it gives the leaders of the company, more visibility in the operating costs of the solution. Well, the cost isn't necessarily less expensive. In some cases, it's actually more predictable, with a set of monthly prices that, include infrastructure, maintenance fees, all that good stuff. And also a lot of people like, having this as pay as you go without any long-term commitments. So the second thing, I would consider as well is security. I do think, BC is a lot more secure product, and I don't think it's any secret in the last couple of years, maybe the last year, the hackers and, companies like that. I've known so many companies that are on premise and have gotten, their networks compromised. And some of these are very large companies, and I never thought in a million years that they would be, vulnerable to this. So I think given that, you really have to consider the security model with BC. Another thing to consider if you're looking at moving to BC would be, your ISVs. GP had a lot of great ISVs, E1, McCorma, SalesPad, those are really staple products that almost every GP install, really had those. So if I was considering moving to BC, the first thing I would do is, call those guys and be like, call your partner and be like, hey, do you have equivalent of this, for Business Central? And then, kind of last we've already talked about a little bit was the upgrades. It's a lot of work to do the upgrades with GP, and BC is just a lot more straightforward. So those are things I would consider.
Yeah, thanks. Great points, and I think you touched on a couple of things that we've seen as well. And if there's an upside, certainly as a Business Central partner, some of the applications, ISVs, that were available in GP, we're starting to see become more available in our space, which has been great. I mean, E1 is one that you mentioned, and we've really, a great relationship with them as well.
I think a lot of, E1 was kind of like the red Ferrari, and I'm unbiased, they're not paying me to say that, but they were the standard in the GP space. And I think a lot of longtime NAB people like you are like, hey, who are these guys? And, they really knocked it out of the park with, in the BC space. So
really did. And I would say that as, so whether you're a partner on this call or a customer on this call, the things that we would say, setting a lot of the dogmatic conversation aside, right? Because we're all passionate about our products. GP's the best. Vision's the best.
Yeah.
When guys like Ryan, who built his career in GP, are looking at the landscape and saying, you know what, I think I'm going to get into developing apps for Business Central. When the red Ferrari at E1 says, hey, you know what, we think we're going to start being part of the Business Central world. These are unbiased decisions that people are making based on the direction we see Microsoft going. BP still has legs. There's still a roadmap. This is not a fire drill, but it is something that you want to consider and plan for. And so as you do that plan, these considerations that Ryan mentioned, a couple of others, we're beginning to see improved tools with data conversion. Up to now, it's been mostly master records. Not wanting to be an E1 commercial, but we do like those guys, and Microsoft clearly likes them because there's.
I think we both like them too. Right. I think they're right down the street, and to be honest, I think at one time, I think Microsoft, they I don't know how all that works, but I think they might have sold their code to them and sold it back, and they're the OEM, because I know.
Right.
Smart List Builder, Extender, and some of that stuff got traded back and forth throughout the years.
Right. Well, and right now that's really the solution for history, right? You're going to remember the old name, but now they call it PopDoc. And, that's the great view. So what Microsoft's doing is they're saying, hey, we'll move all your master records and don't worry about your history because it's going to be up here in our data lake. And we're going to use PopDoc from E1 to present your historic data right within your BC environment. So those are all really great developments. It's been nice to see Microsoft paying such close attention to the GP universe because, obviously it's in their best interest to do so. GP still is the largest install base in America. And so Microsoft's hoping that the GP customers stay with the Dynamics platform. And so, Ryan, when you think about that a little bit, do you have any thoughts before we move into questions on, what might people do relative to their next steps and how should they best plan forward?
Yeah, a couple of things, a couple other things I want to throw out there. Since we've been in the BC space, or really since I've been in the the Microsoft channel for the last 20 years, I've got clients that have been on GP for 20 plus years. Their maintenance renewal, I mean, it's like $400 or $500 a year, and they've Microsoft is very good to their customers. They're not paying me to say that either. That's just what I my opinion, what I see. And one of the things I like is they're saying, hey guys, you don't have to move to BC, but if you want, you can trade in your licensing, and they'll trade that in for BC. And since my company's had the the app and the Microsoft App Store, a lot of times we get people sign up, and first thing I'll ask them, like, hey, what are you guys coming from? And they'll say, well, hey, I'm coming off of this product or that, and I'll be like, well, it seems like in my mind, you just think it's kind of equivalent of BC or GP. And what they tell me is, hey, I paid XYZ in maintenance renewal for my product year 1, 2, 3, and then all of a sudden it was like, boom, now I'm paying 10 or 20 times that. And I don't really know how those models work, but they're kind of pushing those customers out. And so long story short, I feel like Microsoft is very fair, and then just also all the things that you get within their platform are really nice. So that's my opinion. I think sticking within the Microsoft family is the way to go. Just like you said, just all those things are in Office 365 at your fingertips.
So I would add, you want to talk to your partner. Nobody got out of bed this morning and said, hey, let's do an upgrade. This is something that you should be planning for in your IT strategy meetings. So talk to your partner. If you don't have a partner, Ryan and the folks at Innovia would love to have Ryan will participate, and we can talk with you and talk through pros and cons and share with you what we've learned. We're happy to help. And it should help you develop your thinking on what your next steps are going to be. And then, you can execute that plan. Ryan, any last thoughts before we open it up for questions and answers?
Last thought is, I think to answer the question of why we did this, moving to BC from GP, if it were my company and I was on that, the question would be, yes, I'm going to move, but the question would be, when am I going to move? Obviously, like you said, you have to do a lot of planning. It's not a simple upgrade, but you're gonna have to work with your partner and figure that out. But it'd be a question of when, and that's that would be my take.
Good. Well, Ryan, I appreciate you joining, and we're going to cut over here in just a second and take some live questions and answers. So please do stay with us. And thanks to all the GP channel folks that have joined us. We hope this has given you some food for thought and that it's been beneficial. So we'll talk with you in just a second for live Q&A. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.